Hey, welcome back to episode 3 of Wi-Fi Tribe's Living Boldly podcast. Now, this one is a very special one because we're going to be diving deep into the admissions process behind Wi-Fi Tribe. I believe that this is the reason why, after all of those years, Wi-Fi Tribe is still around. But more importantly, this is what is at the very core of the community that we've built. In my opinion, anyone building a community needs to get this piece right. It's about who you bring into the community, how you make your decision about who the community is for, and how you select those people in. So if you've ever been curious about our admissions process, how it works, how we do the things that we do there, this is going to be an interesting one for you because I'm going to pull back the curtains, let you look under the hood so that you can see how it all comes together and why we're doing what we're doing here. And if you are thinking about maybe applying to join Wi-Fi Tribe, listen closely because you might get a few hints or pointers as well in terms of how you might be able to prepare for your interview as you're getting ready for it. So let's go. All right.
Diego, welcome back, my friend. It's good to see you.
Hey, Millen. Likewise. Always look forward to these.
You know, the funniest part of podcasting for me is that we're really greeting each other for the viewers because we've been speaking for the last 20 minutes trying to set this all up.
We're just trying to keep it real.
So we've got a little bit of a fun one in store for everybody today, particularly if you're a prospective member for Wi-Fi Tribe, but also if you're interested in building communities. We're going to be talking today about the admissions process, which is something that you've been obsessing over for nearly 10 years. And it's something that you've had to kind of build trial by error. And I'm very excited to jump into that. But before we do, I want to ask you, do you have any reservations about sharing any part of the secret sauce that's kind of at the core of Wi-Fi Tribe before we jump into the questions?
There's a part of me, Millen, that's a little bit nervous about this episode. I have to be honest, because for two reasons. First of all, this is our secret sauce, right? This is something that, in my opinion, is the reason why we're still around 9 years in, and I believe why many other communities and companies aren't. It's also important to not give people the answers straight up. Because if somebody's interviewing to join the community, we still, if I'm giving everybody a template of how to do really well in the interview, then the interview starts to lose its strength. So that's maybe all I want to say for us to begin this podcast, to let you know if you're listening in. I will spill all the beans. I will, open book. I will share everything I can. There will just be minor little moments where I will not give all of the answers. But let's do it. Let's dive in. I'm nervously ready for it. Let's go.
Amazing. So, okay, let's start right at the beginning. I'm a new member. I've been interested in joining Wi-Fi Tribe for a minute. I've looked into it and I've seen, okay, there's this admissions process, and this process is something that all members need to go through because we have a vetted community. Can you walk me through that journey? How do I apply? What happens when I apply? What are the steps that I go through to join Wi-Fi Tribe? And why is it relevant for us as Wi-Fi Tribe? But also, why is it relevant for communities in general to hold a process of this nature?
Cool, yeah. All right, there's a few questions in there. I'm going to tackle the easy one first, which is, what is the process? So the process is you will fill out an application form on the website. Then the next step is, at that point, that gets reviewed. And if it's a go-ahead from that first application, you would then be invited to an interview call. That's the second stage of it. Then if the interview is successful, you would then receive the third stage, which is just a few further questions. It does get a little bit easier at that point because we already have a lot of the answers that we're looking for from the interview. And then the final part is really kind of linked to that third stage, is we ask for an online personality test, and we use the Myers-Briggs personality test. So that's the 16 personalities. If you've done this before, or if you're doing this shortly before your interview call, that's totally fine as well. You can just give us the answer that you received from that. All of those pieces come together and help us make the final decision on whether it makes sense and whether the fit is good fit on both sides, whether it's mutual on both sides. This is the what stuff, right? So what matters more, I think, though, is why is this important? So coming back to the other part of your question, I truly believe that this is the single most important high impact thing that any community can do to become a successful, sustainable long-term community. Because here's the thing, we can try to bring a bunch of people together and have zero filters. And then when they're all in the same room together, we say, okay, guys, this is what it's all about. Like these are the values that I expect you to live by. This is how I expect you to treat each other. This is how we do things here, right? And it's just not going to work because people have developed their values and have learned and absorbed their values and their behaviors over their entire lifetime, right? Many of those have been instilled in us since we were kids. These aren't things that you simply switch on or off, and it's not things that you just train or explain to somebody and suddenly it changes everything, right? Let me give you a maybe more practical example that's going to resonate with a lot of people because they've heard this before. If you've ever heard about how to build a team in a company or in a startup, the new way to do it that's being repeated over and over again is you don't hire for skills primarily, you hire for culture fit. The idea behind that is exactly the same. It's that if you can bring people together who are already attuned with the culture that you're trying to build in the company, what you're basically doing is that you're buying into your company the culture that you want to see going forward, right? So if every one of the people that you bring into your team has a set of values, each one, I usually refer to it as this circle that each person is. Each person is a circle with values in them. When you bring them all together, you create this big Venn diagram where all of these circles overlap. The middle of all of those circles overlapping, that is going to become, by default, the culture of your team or your company, or in our case, your community. Because what everybody has in common in terms of their values ultimately ends up becoming the culture that everybody effectively agrees on, right? And when I say, let me demystify this a little bit because some of this might sound a little lofty, but what I mean with values is it's simple things. It's respect. It's how do I treat others? It's are we inclusive? Are we not? It's, how do we respond to things? It's what do we do with our time? What are we chasing? What are some of the goals that we have? There's all sorts of things that come into that, but really it boils down to how one person interacts with another person, how one person treats another person. And that is so incredibly important in teams and companies and in communities, right? So that's why it's incredibly valuable for us to do this. And I believe that any community should start here. Should start by defining, first of all, well, what is it that we're actually going to do? Why do we want to bring people together? Once that's done, move to the second most important step, which is what values do I want these people to already have so that I attract people with those values into my community so that everybody who comes in is super aligned, right? If you can just do those two things, you're already bound to create an incredible community. Because if you can just bring really aligned people into a room, magic happens. Imagine that same example that I gave you in the beginning. You invited a bunch of people into a room together. But this time what you did is you said, well, actually, we want to make sure that the people that we're bringing into this room are people who believe in humility, like they're down to earth, people who are very respectful to other people, and people who believe that living life more boldly, living life more intentionally is something that is really important to them. Now, everybody in that room is going to resonate on those things. And the conversations that people will have will go so much deeper. And the way that they will engage with each other will feel so much better because everybody agrees on how we're engaging here, right? And that's exactly what we've done with the admissions process and what we've done with Wi-Fi Tribe.
When you say the admissions process, what comes to mind is, in a way, this idea that you've kind of flipped sales on its head. I think about this from a member's perspective or a prospective member's perspective. And I think there's still many prospective members out there who think that the admissions call is a sales call, that we're going to get on a call with them and sell them something. When in actual fact, we're interviewing them. What do you look for in that interview that impacts the decision you make to either invite a member to apply and accept them or not?
Yeah. So first of all, you're right. We do get a lot of people who still, to this day, even though so much information about, honestly, our process is already out there, we still get people thinking or feeling that it's going to be a sales call, right? Because that's the standard, not just in the industry, but that's the standard around the world, right? Whenever there's a price tag involved in something and you can buy something, anytime that you get on a call with someone to buy something, by default, 99 out of 100 times, it's about selling, right? So often people come onto the calls and are quite taken aback when they realize just how much of an interview call it is, right? Luckily, because we have these other steps earlier as well, people do start to get the feel for it and realize, oh, Wi-Fi Tribe is taking this seriously, and maybe I should too. I should just make sure that I'm showing up and being a little bit prepared for it, right? That's not to say there's a lot to prepare, because at the end of the day, the point is show up as you, and we will do our very best to make sure that we figure out the right fit. I want to just caveat this. I see the admissions process as a service primarily, almost separate of Wi-Fi Tribe. I see it as a service to the individual person who's showing up for that interview call. Because here's the thing. If you're really, really serious about an admissions process, then what you're doing is you are dedicating a lot of time, effort, resources to helping this person make the right decision for whether to take a step forward into this thing or this community or not. And that's incredibly valuable to that person, right? I would argue that a yes is just as valuable as a no, because if we have spent this, it's 45 minutes on that interview call, if we spent this time and we figure out, actually, we don't know whether the person's really going to enjoy it here, we don't know whether they're going to fit right in and it's going to feel great, then the best, kindest thing that we can possibly do is to say, hey, I just don't think that it's the right fit. Because the alternative to that is that that person gets a yes, comes through, joins a trip or meets the community anywhere around the world, and just doesn't feel connected to everybody else, right? Just doesn't feel like this is their kind of thing, has invested time and effort into it, has felt like they've taken a risk to go somewhere across the world to meet these people, and feels disillusioned, right? So it's in a sense, it's our duty, both for that person, that individual who we maybe say no to, and for every single member who we say yes to. And here's why that's super important, because they will then come into a community full of other people that we have also said yes to. And that ultimately means that they're going to experience the best possible version of the community, right? We will never get it 100% right, ever. It keeps me up at night. It's the thing, like, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm going, no, there has to be a way. We got to get this perfect. I've been spending 9 years trying to get this perfect. I've come to the conclusion, I believe it does not exist. But, and here's the crazy part, this is what people are going to say, like, what's wrong with this guy? It's not going to stop me from trying to make it 100% perfect, that system. Because I think that we need to constantly strive to get to perfection, even though the reality says that we will not ever get it 100% right. Because that means that we're always going to try to get it that little bit better. And that extra effort makes all of the difference, right? Because that extra effort means that that one person we said no to goes somewhere else, has an amazing experience somewhere else. Awesome, perfect. They're on the journey that they should have been on, right? And the people that then go on a trip meet people who are all super aligned. Everything feels incredible, right? Yeah, I have probably deviated us. So if I haven't answered your question fully, Milan, please let me know.
When you're answering this question, and for anyone listening, Diego's half Bolivian, half German. And when you're answering this question, I'm listening to you and I'm sort of hearing this like wrestling match happening inside you between the German that wants things to be perfect and the Bolivian that's going like, passion is important. What about the feeling? It's never going to be 100%, It's like I'm watching like this opera happening in front of me. It's so funny. But the question I asked in the beginning was, what are you looking for that impacts your decision to accept a member or not?
Yeah, perfect. So for Wi-Fi Tribe, we've identified 6 values that are really important to us. And these 6 values are the basis of our entire admissions process, right? So it's passion, curiosity, camaraderie, inclusion, humility, and God, I am forgetting the last one.
Perfection.
Passion, camaraderie, curiosity, inclusion. Milan, we're going to have to cut this, by the way.
Respect, humility.
We cannot leave this one in.
Respect, humility.
Respect,
camaraderie,
There
curiosity,
we go.
passion, and inclusion.
Perfect. We're going to have to do a cut. Let's try it. Do you want to ask that question again, actually?
Yeah, sure. So the question that I'm asking is, what is it that you're looking for in an interview that impacts your decision to either accept a member or not?
Yeah. So the entire admissions process is based on our 6 community values. It's respect, passion, camaraderie, curiosity, inclusion, and humility. And so we use those. They become the basis of how we then, of what we're looking for. So that basically means we want to bring people into the community who all already live by and hold these core values dear, right? So imagine you come into a room and you're one of these people. You say, these 6 values, that already resonates with me strongly. You would come into that room in Wi-Fi Tribe and everybody there would have those core 6 values. And then of course they'd have all of their other values too, right? Because as humans, we're super complex and there's so much more to us. But the point is, can we get aligned on the ones that we believe matter the most, right? There's a little more to it. There's a few more things that we're looking for, but these six values and then a few turn into 18 different criteria points that we assess against as we're doing the application process and the interviews. So each of these points then becomes, we have a formula for that then gives us an outcome that says how close the community or cultural alignment is with the ideal cultural alignment that we're looking for. And like with any process in the world, there's a bar, there's a minimum amount that we need so that there is the cultural alignment that we're looking for. And that then defines whether it's going to be a yes or a no, right? To dig into a few of these just a little bit more, we also look for people who are easygoing. So this concept of, I guess, being adventurous, that yes, travel brings that with you, but honestly, I've seen all sorts of travelers through this decade, right? You'll see the ones that are truly adventurous and easygoing and go with the flow. And then you'll see the people who they'll love travel just as much, but they aren't that, right? And if you ask yourself, who would you want to be in a room with if you're going to be traveling and spending a month living and working with them side by side, right? You're going to want to be with a person who, if shit goes wrong, if something happens, they just go with it and they say, okay, cool. They stay positive, they stay upbeat, and you just keep moving, right? Those are the best kind of people to have on any trip with you, right? And that leads me on to the next one, this element of positivity around it. Again, someone who is uplifting, who uplifts other people, right? There's a lot of other concepts that maybe you can almost boil them down to people who are emotionally intelligent, right? So there's that concept of thoughtfulness, of giving, of contributing something to the group, to the community, the respect piece to it, right? So all of those kind of come into that same bucket as well. So those are a few additional things that we look for in addition to those six values. And I do want to say at this point, I think this is really, really, really important. There is no point showing up on the interview call, having, for example, listened to this podcast and being like, I like Diego's super fluffy. I don't know what he's talking about there. Like, I don't really care for those values. Not my kind of thing. And trying to kind of, cheat your way, if you will, through the interview process. Again, we're here to deliver that service of giving you the answer that is ultimately the best possible answer for you, right? And so it's so important for you to just show up as who you are and allow us to understand whether the values that you already come in with are matching up with the values that we have in the community, right? So the best thing that you can do is come in as yourself.
What happens when we get it wrong?
Yeah, like I said before, it happens. First of all, I cry a little. I shed a tear. It hurts. Like, it genuinely does, because this is, to me, the most important part of this entire community. It is all about bringing people together who will vibe together and who will treat each other in the best way possible, right? In fact, there's a part of me that thinks that we have this opportunity to create almost like this other society, this alternative little place that exists all over the world. It's like a sub-society. It's a little bubble that once you enter it, you're like, oh my God, everyone's so awesome here, right? That is so different from what you often see outside of that bubble, right? The number of times that we've all gone through life and we've come across people who have treated us like shit, or who have treated other people poorly, who've treated, somebody at a restaurant poorly, the waiters. it's these constant reminders that there are so many people out there who could be doing a lot better. And I personally feel that the really good people, the people who live by these values, who actually are kind to other people, who are thoughtful, I feel like they deserve better. I feel like they deserve to be together with other people like them. So again, side tangent, this is one of those little obsessions that I have. It's like, what if we could create that alternative society, alternative little world or bubble where all of those people could rub shoulders with each other a lot more, right? And be in a world where it's maybe not as abrasive and a lot more supportive for them. What happens when we get it wrong? That was the question. I'm coming back to it. Don't worry. When we get it wrong, a few things happen. First of all, the person might join and somehow feel like they don't connect really on a chapter or with a group. That sucks, right? You just feel like, I thought this was going to be it, but it's not, you know? So that's already something that I really want to avoid. More importantly, I would say, because the community does always come first. What happens if we get it wrong with one person, it's okay, because it's one in a large group of people. But it's important to obsess over getting it right, because when we get it wrong a few times, then the number of people in that group that aren't quite aligned with that culture starts to increase. And as you start to have more and more people who are not aligned with that culture, it starts to tear at the fabric of that community. It starts to break things down. And it starts to shift culture. This is something really, really interesting that I've come to figure out, and I credit Amanda, one of our hosts, an absolutely amazing person, for verbalizing this. She says, there is never no culture. There is no such thing as no culture. When there is a culture void, which is in the brief moment where people meet each other, what happens is that you develop a default culture, and that default culture happens when it's basically the sum of the values, if you will, of all of the people that are there, or the loudest person in the room can have a massive impact on that culture, right? So again, if I was to bring a random group of people together, the culture would be random, right? It would be down to whatever the sum of its parts is, or it would be down to whoever has the loudest voice, right? Or whoever pushes the hardest to be heard, right? And that's, for us, that does not create community. That does not create the consistency in culture that you need in community, right? So coming back to what happens when we get it wrong once, twice, 3 times, and that percentage starts to increase. You could have that loud person in that group, and they will massively shift the direction of the culture, right? Or you could have too many people who all have something in common in terms of maybe some of their values, a certain vibe about them. Maybe it's a very kind of cliquey, exclusive kind of group. And because there's enough of them, they start to chip away at that inclusivity piece that we want to have in the community, right? And these are a few examples, but the obvious ones are we make a mistake and somebody comes in who's really not down to earth, right? They stick out like a sore thumb, because they walk in and immediately you sense the ego, right? And everybody else in the community is not about that. So everyone goes like, that's kind of weird. You know, like it feels off. Something feels off about it. Or you have somebody that comes in and we made a mistake. We didn't see it. And they're actually quite abrasive. And I've experienced this in the past. This is one of the main things that we've been looking at and we've been trying to fix. And we go back and we say, oh, what did we do wrong? How can we adjust this, right? Somebody really abrasive comes in. You can imagine what that does to the culture, right? They make other people feel unsafe in small ways, you know? When somebody says something, they might jump in and shut them down, or they might jump in and make fun of somebody, right? And when that happens 3-4 times, everybody in the group, everybody in that community starts to feel like it's not a place where I can just be open, speak, and just kind of try to connect. It's a place where I need to have my guard up, right? And so because of this one person that's super abrasive, everybody has their guard up. And suddenly you're not able to go deeper with the group, right? Because of that. And it's a really sad outcome for a community, right? I'm giving you a few of the examples. There are, of course, a lot more. Maybe another interesting one is what happens when someone comes in and they're quite negative, quite sort of pessimistic or not easygoing. You might think at first, well, okay, you know, that's going to suck a little bit for Wi-Fi Tribe. They're going to have to deal with somebody who's a little bit more high maintenance, if you will, right? And it does, and we don't want that either. So we're definitely all about, like, you know, not catering to that. But more importantly for the whole group, if somebody comes in and is super negative, imagine somebody organizes a weekend trip. And I'm giving you a real example here of something that happened in Santa Marta on a trip that I was on as well. I was hosting. The group organized a weekend trip. It was, adventurous, all sorts of things to happen. They were going to go in a bus. That bus was going to take them to a remote beach somewhere. They were going to go into, I don't know, these tubes and just float down a river. Sounded absolutely amazing. I wasn't able to make that trip, unfortunately. They got into the bus. There were two personalities there that were quite abrasive, very abrasive. And on that trip, every little thing that went wrong, because things inevitably go wrong on a trip, right? Everything that went wrong, these people were constantly negative about it. And they made the organizers feel really horrible about organizing. And so the next time around, those members who had, generously given something to the group, to the community, and said, hey, we're going to organize this cool trip, they said, ooh, I don't want to organize another one because I don't want that experience. I don't want somebody to basically be constantly negative about it. And everybody else who was on that trip, their entire experience, their entire weekend was painted with a negative brush. No matter how positive you are, if there's somebody who's constantly just shitting on everything, then you go, either I don't want to hear it anymore, I don't want to be around that, or I'm starting to get influenced by it and go oh yeah, this does suck a little bit, right? You come out of it, and a weekend that could have been so adventurous and roll with the punches and, classic travel experiences where stuff does go wrong, ends up being something that you wish you hadn't done or it just wasn't a good experience, right? This was a real example. It was definitely one of the most extreme ones that has happened. This was, I think, 5 years ago or so. But it matters, right? And these are the reasons why we are so meticulous, so careful about these things. And you're starting to hear me talk about the different facets, the different personality traits that we try to avoid. As you see, there are several, and they each have different consequences. They each matter.
In a way, it seems as though you're looking for highly collaborative individuals, people who are naturally comfortable being with other people and collaborating to create things. I imagine that makes Wi-Fi Tribe potentially a place that is exciting for people who work in teams, for founders, for freelancers who enjoy working with a plethora of different personality types in terms of their clients. And I wonder to myself what the world would be like if this sort of process existed in other areas as well, but that's maybe a bit of a selfish wondering. The next question I have for you is a little bit more focused on the business of Wi-Fi Tribe. I understand that you instituted this admissions process relatively early on. Obviously, there were certain things that transpired that had you decide to do that. And it's not necessarily the smartest business move in terms of cash flow. You're essentially turning away people who want to join the community in favor of those that have a better culture fit. What has this strict admission stance that we have cost us in terms of short-term growth? And in your view, what has it made possible for the long term?
Yeah, I think that is probably the most, from like a Wi-Fi Tribe existing today, that's probably the most relevant question. On our second ever trip, there was this guy that I met who was really into business, and I thought this was going to be my next buddy, mentor. I really like the guy, very, very savvy person. And he would say, Diego, what are you doing? You're leaving money on the table. It makes no sense, right? But I don't know why I had this stubborn belief that it needed to be this way, right? It had to be this way. I'm trying to think back to where that might have started, where I felt that way. I used to, before doing Wi-Fi Tribe, I was part of these other communities. I was trying to build other companies. Everything was always revolved around communities. And I realized that communities worked when people identified with each other at a core level, not at a surface level. Communities aren't about, you also work in marketing, or you also run, or those things are too broad, too simple. It doesn't go deep enough, right? Sure, you can have running communities and people are like super into the fitness style of it, but the connections even in those communities that you form on a deeper level are the ones where not only does the person share some lifestyle thing with you that maybe is the first trigger, but actually at the core, you and that person agree on the things that are fundamentally so important to you, right? If, for example, for me, humility, being down to earth is an incredibly important one. If I meet somebody who has a big ego, I react allergically to it. Like I get pimples in the face. No, I just don't want to be around that person, right? And I will either remove myself or be like, okay, like this conversation is gonna be over for me, right? That's what happens when at the core your values are mismatched with somebody else's, right? So I noticed that people would identify strongly with each other in these communities that worked very well. And I saw communities that didn't work so well, where there was just there were no core values that were adhered to closely, right? Or where there's no selection in that process. So that made me think from day one, if we're going to bring a bunch of people together into, in the beginning, it was literally just, we're going to go travel to Bolivia for a month together with a bunch of people. We're going to be in Nicaragua, that was the next place, with a bunch of people co-working, co-living for a month, right? You're going to bring strangers, effectively, internet strangers from all over the world together in one place, from all sorts of different cultures. You have to make sure that you have a way for these people to identify with each other and to get along. Like there has to be something, some kind of a promise that I can make to every single person joining that says, listen, they're not just randos from the internet. They are people that you will probably really enjoy being around, right? For this month that you're going to be there. So we did the interviews. We actually started doing the interviews on the second trip, on the Nicaragua trip, where I started running ads. I just put Facebook ads out there. And that meant now I was literally out in the internet in front of absolutely everybody. And there was no more personal connection to any of the people that I was going to bring in. So I remember still in those first months when things really started to blow up, there were days where I was taking 8 interview calls in a single day. That is the entire day, back to back of interview calls. Like it was absolutely wild back then. I think back, I'm like going, how did I do anything else? Because then we also hung out, we also had fun. We were trying to build this business at the same time. I don't know. I had energy back then that I do not have today. And I don't know where I picked out this time, but that's where it began. That's where the whole admissions process. So it started right from the beginning and it's gone all the way through 9 years. That was 9 years ago, all the way through today. It's evolved, but that's where it started.
I don't know if you have any less energy today than you did back then. Maybe in your experience, but your work ethic it's insane. Your energy for the things that you love is incredible. It's like we talk about it as a team. Sometimes when you're not on team calls with us, we're like, how is Diego? Dude, does he have extra hours in the day? Are you taking supplements we don't know about? Like, what's the deal, man? What's going on? Yeah, man.
It's good for the brain.
Getting that pump.
Well, no, that's the thing. Total sidebar, but apparently nowadays people are taking creatine for the brain. You just need to take a little more than you would take for muscle building. And yeah, nice side effect that does help a little bit in the gym. But
good to know. I'm currently taking creatine, so I'll just take a little extra.
There you go.
So you've spoken a lot about the ads, and obviously when you're running ads, you can set some parameters around who you would like to reach and the sort of regions you would like to reach with those ads. You can't be so granular as to filter for specific personality types or that kind of thing, right? And I know from speaking to you and my own observation of life that the more diversity you have in a community, the more vibrant that community, and the more enjoyable the experience for each of the members in that community. Which begs the question, 100%. How do we mitigate biases to ensure that our admissions process remains inclusive in spite of the fact that we're consciously trying to promote diversity in our community?
I absolutely love that question. Okay, so quick sort of backstory. I'm German Bolivian. I didn't grow up in Germany. I didn't grow up in Bolivia. I grew up moving from country to country on average 2 to 3 years because of my parents' jobs. So it was the expat kind of upbringing. What that did to me is that I neither feel at home in a group of Germans, nor do I feel at home in a group of Bolivians. In fact, there isn't actually any place or any group of people where I'm like, I'm 100% in and I vibe and I 100% get it, because I don't have that nuance of all of the inside jokes, the TV shows they watch, the cultural references, like all of that. Even my accent's kind of weird in different language. So it's strange, right? Where I do feel amazing is in an international environment. There's something about an international environment that where the playing field is leveled, the communication field, the humor, like the humor that you use is leveled to an international sense of humor, where you're like, how do I do something that's funny or humorous that spans across sometimes even language, right? That just anybody will get it, right? It's an example, but the point is you're trying to communicate with other people in a way that's almost culture agnostic. And that, in my opinion, is also the best, most exciting environment for a community like this, especially if it's a community where travel is in our DNA, right? Everybody's obsessed with being able to travel and experience the rest of the world. Why would we want to experience the rest of the world in our own little bubble of just people from our country, right? I think the most beautiful thing you can do is to stand side by side with people from all these different nationalities, all these different cultures, and look at a new place that's new to everybody. You will get, if there are 15 people standing around you, there are 15 different perspectives, 15 different ways of seeing the same thing that you're looking at, right? And it's this wonderful opportunity to not just experience the culture of the country that you're in, but to experience the culture of the 15 other countries that are standing next to you and who are also experiencing that culture. So I wanted to say all that so that you understand how important this piece is to me, and that this is never going to be something that we'll let fall on the wayside. Now, another important thing to know is, unfortunately, in the digital nomad space as a whole, there was a stat, I think you can actually look at this in Nomad List now, it's called, I think, nomads.com. It's a platform that just shows you destinations for nomads. You could look in there and it would show you how many people from which nationalities they have in their entire community. Their community is, or their network, really, it's not a community, it's a network, is massive, right? They have so many people that have kind of signed into it. So it shows you that the majority of the people, I think it's about 50%, come from North America, from US and Canada. And the remaining 50% are a mix from the rest of the world, majority then again being Europe, and then it kind of trickles down into other continents as well, right? This, what you see there, because it's such a wide sample of people, is the unfortunate reality of remote workers who are able to travel, because that's the reality of all of the nations or all the countries and the bureaucracies that allow people to travel or not, right? That same representation, you're going to find it across any community, including Wi-Fi Tribe, right? And so we're always trying our best to increase that international factor, but we're always fighting against the reality of the nomad space as a whole, right? Cool. So coming back to the interview process, how do we make sure that there's no bias, that we're not nudging out people who, and ultimately creating a very homogenous group? The admissions process as a whole, the only bias that I see in it is that a person who speaks English is going to have a slight advantage in being able to communicate, or I'm going to say speaks English as a first language, to communicate their answer when we ask them questions in the interview, right? English was not my first language, and there was definitely a time where for me it wasn't the easiest to communicate. So I understand that it can feel more difficult, more daunting to try to get onto an interview and really communicate what you want to say, right? So we have a piece in our formula that helps out with that a little bit, and that basically nudges it just gives a little bit of an extra buffer to people who are coming from other nationalities that are underrepresented in Wi-Fi Tribe, right? So that's one piece. Beyond that, what we use is, again, I think I referred to it before, those 18 different criteria points. There was a time when I was doing all of the admissions calls myself. Over the years, Milan, I've done over 1,000 interview calls. That's absolutely wild. Like that's, getting close to, 8,000 hours of literally doing interview calls. There was a moment where I had to stop and somebody else had to come in so that I could dedicate time to something else as well. And when I handed that over, I remember I trained that person. I trained them, one-to-one, kind of like really showed them the ropes of everything. But here's how we did it. I acted on a gut feeling, because that's all we have. Realistically, that's all you have in an interview. in any interview. You are asking questions, you're getting a response. You need to read between the lines. You need to understand what the person is saying. You need to say, do I believe everything that was said here? Is there any nuance here? Is there any body language? So there's a lot of different things that you're trying to assess, but it's all with a gut feeling. And when I passed this on to the next person, it was the same. I trained them, but ultimately it was still that person's gut feeling, right? It led over years to us making mistakes that could have also led to biases. And we can talk about this in a little bit. I'm sure that we'll dig into this topic, but it led to problems really for the community where the quality for a period of time dipped, right? So how do we control that, and how do we control some of those biases? When that happened, I went back into the system that we had, and I realized, okay, I carved out literally, I think it was like 2 or 3 months for this, and dug deep into this thing and said, I'm not going to give up until I figured out a system, an actual system that translates my gut feeling in a way where if I gave it to somebody else and I trained them up, they could use that system and they would get as close to the same answer as I am getting with all of the admissions calls that I'm doing, right? That system, part of that is breaking it down into smaller pieces, right? Into those 18 different points, adding weighting to each of those 18 different points. And then, of course, layer on top of that all the training that you need to be able to understand the nuance of what some of these responses mean in an interview, right? The cool part is, like, this made me really, really happy to realize there are now interviewers that are better. They are getting objectively better outcomes than I used to get, which is absolutely amazing. Like, their rate of bringing the right people into the community is higher than mine ever was. That, to me, is wild. Because it means that not only have they been able to use that system, but now they've layered their own intuition on top of that, and they've been able to get really strong outcomes. So yes, that's how you avoid bias as well, because a system is effectively taking over on that decision making. Our interviewers don't even make the decision. They only input their gut feeling on each of those little points, and the system then gives them the answer, right? This helps us to never be in that place where we have to worry about bias.
Amazing. And just as a selfish aside, do you use that system when you conduct hires for the team?
Not fully. But the difference with hiring a part of it. I even use some of the same questions. But the difference is that obviously when I'm hiring somebody for the team, and you know this, Millen, yourself, it can take a while. Like, we can have a lot of conversations. It feels like we know each other, and we've known each other for years by the time that the hiring process is over. I'm so sorry, and I'm sorry to anybody who applies in the future for Wi-Fi Tribe as well. But it makes all of the difference.
It does make all the difference. I can say from experience, by the time you get into the team, it feels like you were always part of the team, and that's rare. I've never had that experience before. So at the beginning of this long answer to a short question, you mentioned...
Sorry.
You mentioned you're half German, half Bolivian. And a couple of episodes ago, I asked you what you think the collective noun for a group of Germans is. So I'm going to flip that around and ask you what you think the collective noun for a group of Bolivians is.
I'm going to have to say salteñas of Bolivians. Salteñas they're delicious. They're this, like, most people would know it as an empanada, which is basically this doughy package of goodness inside. And in Bolivia, they add more ingredients than you've ever had in one of those empanadas inside. It's basically like an entire complex soup on the inside. There's once a day, and they are significant in size. Like, most people eat 2 of them and they're good. There was a day when I was a teenager, like, I can't do this anymore. Before I took a flight, I ate 13 of those.
Jeez.
I thought I could somehow stock them up. I know that's not how food works. Now I know. But yeah, that was my experience. So salteñas of Bolivians. And I don't think that any Bolivian would be upset with that, because we are so proud of those. They're amazing. They are delicious.
All right. And if you're listening to this on audio only and not on video, I just want to apologize for the background noise. Diego is sitting in a beautiful little spot in Bali at the moment where he stays when he's in Bali, and there's a bunch of construction happening around him. So if you can hear that construction, apologies. But that's the context. We're keeping it real. The next question...
Glenn, there is no place in Bali without construction at this point.
You've been going there for years.
Yeah, yeah. And there's been construction for years, but truly now you can try to go anywhere. You will not find it. Sorry, I say Bali. This is a gross overstatement. Let me take everything back I just said Canggu, right? In the area that I'm in, yeah, super bold.
Super busy.
Back to you, Miller.
How should I prepare? I'm like a new member. I'm excited for my interview. How should I prepare for my interview? Like, should I have a notebook and pen? Do I just bring myself? What do I need to bear in mind before I show up?
Cool. Love the question. In the simplest terms, just be yourself. I know that's always a crappy answer because people are like, well, sure, that doesn't help me, right? But in this case, truly, again, it's a service. We're trying to help you figure out whether this is a great fit. And the best thing you can do is help us help you. Help us figure that out by just showing up as who you are and just answering honestly, just jamming with the interviewer so that the interviewer can get to the bottom of that. And then let our system, I've just explained it to everybody, it's insanely complex, developed for 9 years. Let our system do the rest, right? It just works. It just works. But how can you prepare? There is some stuff that you can do to prepare that I think would be really valuable. You can already start to get into it. You can start to figure out, is this the right kind of community for me or not, right? The more of these podcasts you listen to, the more you will realize whether it's your vibe, right? The more you kind of read on our website, look at our Instagram. There's a ton of stuff going on there. We're always sharing. I see Instagram as it is the window into the Wi-Fi Tribe experience, right? So we always try to just show what's happening on chapters, what's going on. You do that, you will probably get a really good sense for it. Last thing maybe that you could do if you wanted to, but overzealous, you really want to prepare, have a sit down and ask ChatGPT to ask you or to help you figure out what are the values that you live by, and have it go back and forth with you a few times. By the end of that little ChatGPT conversation, you're going to come out of it with a little more clarity. That clarity you can then bring into the call as well, and you will help us understand a little better who you are.
I love that answer. I feel like it's the closest thing to a cheat sheet anybody's going to get.
Yes.
And you mentioned that a while back, we were in the conversation, we were talking, and you said that you had originally instituted this application process when you went to Nicaragua. Now, something else happened in Nicaragua, which we touched on briefly before, which was the FBI got involved in something to do with Wi-Fi Tribe. And I'm dying to know what happened.
Oof. The FBI story, right? No, I see a pattern. Yeah. So we were in Nicaragua. It wasn't actually that first chapter. It was the second time that we went to Nicaragua. And at the same time, we were running a chapter in Italy, and that was actually the chapter that I was on. And there's this other guy in Nicaragua who was running the Nicaragua chapter. I'd only just met that guy. It's the same guy that I told you about before. The one was like, he's going to be my best friend. He's so awesome. And this guy was doing a weekend trip with a group. And one of the members who was on that weekend trip, that's when they received the call. In the meantime, back in Italy, we had decided to do this 6-week trip, which we never do. Like, that was a wild idea. And we said, we're going to do 2 weeks here. Then we're going to do 2 weeks in another part of Italy. So we went south to north, 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. And then the last 2 weeks we were in Florence, right? And I had jumped in on to the last part of that trip. This is the beginning of Wi-Fi Tribe. So please, everybody, things have changed, but it was a shit show. Right? By the end of it, we had lost, I think, 5 members on that trip. They were like, this isn't working for me. I'm out. We had internet issues all along that journey on the previous 2 destinations in Italy that we were in. We get to the last destination, and we're still in the early stages of Wi-Fi Tribe here. I barely have any money. Remember, I started Wi-Fi Tribe with negative money in the bank account, right? And we get to that place, and this guy who was helping us in Nicaragua, who was running that trip there, he was also, for whatever reason, we can get into it more in the future, he was actually running the funds of Wi-Fi Tribe through his personal or his business account, not through our account. It's a wild, wild thing. And so we were relying on him to send the payments to the landlord so that we could keep going. And we get this message from the landlord in Italy, in Florence. They're like, where's the payment? We haven't received the payment, right? It goes back and forth like this for a day. And as days go by, that landlord gets increasingly aggressive. We're asking that guy from Nicaragua, is like, hey, could you check in on the payment? How's it going? What's happening over there? He's going to like, no, I sent it. Everything's good. Everything's fine. I've sent it. So I'm confused. I'm like, but where did it get stuck, right? The landlord's getting increasingly heated. It gets to the point where the landlord says, if you guys don't pay us tomorrow, we are evicting you and all of the members who are on your trip from our accommodation. And just imagine that with no buffer money in the bank account, I had to called up family, called up my sister, like, hey, could you borrow us some money? Could you lend us some money? There was no time for that transfer to arrive for me to be able to pay this person back. So we had to ask the members who were on the chapter, who had already paid for the trip and who'd gone through all of the internet issues from before and who were the only members that were left after all of the other ones had dropped off. Because of how much of a shit show it was, we had to ask them to give us the money that we needed to be able to pay so that we all would not get kicked out the next day. Again, I don't know why it happened and why people did it, but they did. And of course, our promise was, listen, as soon as the money's in our accounts, we're going to give it right back to you. Called parents, called my sister again, said, can you still send it? We're going to pass it on to them. We didn't get kicked out. We finished off that chapter. But man, what a disaster. What a disaster. This is what I'm telling you. When I say I had energy back then that I don't have today, if this kind of stuff happened to me today, I would crumble. I don't know who we were back then. We were made of rubber. Different time.
It's interesting to see, I think about businesses in the same way I think about the stages of life. When you look at toddlers, when you look at babies, it literally is like they're made of rubber. They'll be running along, they trip, they fall, they land directly on their face, and they get up laughing and they keep running. And you're like, what the hell? And then if an adult was to do that, you're going to the ER, you're getting an MRI, you're going to have to get a head injury assessment, you're bedridden, you're off work for a week, your TV shows that you like are no longer streaming because for whatever reason, it always happens all at the same time. It's a disaster, honestly. The last question I have for you is, if you did it all over again, would you do it this way?
Would I do it all this way? I'm going to answer that from a perspective of the admissions process, because that's been the theme of today. Because, God, no, I would change so many things if I did it all again. Could save myself a lot of headaches, including not routing our money through that guy's bank account and a million other things. If I did it all again from an admissions perspective, I would do two things differently. I would get even more obsessed in the beginning, knowing that in the long term, we have stayed around, I believe, when 200 other companies have come and gone in these 9 years. Like, we used to keep a spreadsheet of all of that. We're the only company from that time to still be standing on its own the way that it started. And I believe that we were here because we obsessed so much over this one thing that makes no financial sense in the short to medium term and makes no business sense, right? Leaving effectively money on the table, saying no to people who are willing to pay. People get so confused by that. But in the long term, what we did is that people trusted us. People trusted that when they joined a trip, accommodation isn't always going to be perfect. Stuff isn't always going to be perfect. But what's going to be really great? The community, right? Because there is this obsession over getting that part right and bringing the right people together. And so you're going to walk away from that experience with so many friends, maybe people you're collaborating with, maybe even people have ended up getting married, having babies. Like, there's incredible things that have come out of it, right? I think that at the core needs to stay, and I would have obsessed even more about it in the beginning. Second thing, I would have figured out that system, that ultimate kind of process way earlier, because there was a whole period where we slowly made so many mistakes in terms of letting people in and being a little bit too loose about that. You don't see the result of that right away. It takes people months before they'll join a trip, and then it can take a year before you realize that the percentage of people who weren't quite aligned with the community or the culture has increased, and suddenly something's different. But really, all of that started 2 years ago, right? And then it's incredibly difficult to turn that around, because now you have to deal with, we've even had to deal with saying to people, listen, you can't continue on Wi-Fi Tribe. There's been really difficult decisions that we've had to make back then. And those decisions always happen when we've made the wrong decision in terms of the admissions process on the front end, right? So I would get a lot more strict on that a lot earlier. And I think that is at the very, very, very core of what we do and what makes this community the way that it is. It is so much more about this and bringing the right people together, even than it is about travel. Travel is the backdrop to all of it, right? It's the lifestyle we enjoy. It's in our DNA. But who we are as people, as humans, that is so much more important.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today. And lastly, if I want to find out more about Wi-Fi Tribe, or I want to find out more about you, where can I find that information?
Best place as always is subscribe to our podcast. Get these episodes. If you're really curious about Wi-Fi Tribe, trust me, over all of the episodes that we'll do, you will hear literally anything and everything that you could possibly ever want to know about Wi-Fi Tribe. You'll be able to jump in, find the episodes that really interest you. Like this one for a lot of people has been super interesting. That's why we did it so early on. It's the best place to get all the info. Of course, you can also hop over to Instagram. That's where you'll get something a little different. It's the visuals, right? It's the who are the members. It's what does it actually look and feel like. So yeah, follow us there. You'll get all of our updates there. And then, of course, I'd recommend drop your email. You can find it on our website, wifitribe.co. Oh, that's also the Instagram, wifitribe.co. And we will keep you updated. Like the easiest way is if you drop your email in there, we'll let you know about podcasts. We'll let you know about anything important that's happening. We'll let you know about all of our newest destinations that are being popped up. And yeah, but thank you so much for listening and for being a part of this crazy journey and being okay with our obsessive approach to community building.